Hello YouTube friends, and hello dear patrons of course, and hello everyone who has not seen me here on YouTube yet. My name is Mandy van Goeie. I am a Dutch artist slash illustrator, and every now and then I do reviews of the product I'm working with and sharing with you some of my process, like today, the composition of my ideal watercolor palette. I spent a great many days doing this. It looks very simple, but this actually took more than a full time. No, it was like about 7 days from early morning till midnight or after. So you will see some of that process here. I did a live video about that, so you can still find that on my YouTube. I'm not going to repeat everything there, especially since this was my first ideal palette, the one that I showed in the live video. And this is the second. And as you can see, they are not the same. So this was version 1, and this is version 2. And as I'm filming, there is a version 3 coming together because one of these colours is going out and a new colour is coming in. So, composing an ideal set. Classic watercolorists are going to say that, 52 or 51 colours is too much. Maybe yes, not for me. I work in an illustrator style, so I need a great many colours, and I do mix. I mix a lot, which is why my ideal palette needed to have a great composition, colour balance wise, because I needed to have them all mixed together really well. So that's the first characteristic I needed them to have. They had to be great at mixing. So I needed professional quality paints for the purest pigments, for the most beautiful and the brightest of colors. The second characteristic I needed was that the paint would either come in half pans or in tubes, preferably in tubes because I could do refills. And then the last, of course, like I said, professional quality. So the paint had to have really good painting characteristics and behavior. But the last and a very important thing that I struggled with is all the colors in here had to be light fast. And that resulted in a lot of research and in a lot of fussing about what colors I should use, could use, and sometimes I couldn't use certain colors I really wanted in there. Also, I had to kill a lot of my darlings. There are so many paints that I love working with, but once I tried to put them into my ideal set, they started falling out of place. And not just because, I wasn't looking for an overall subjectively ideal set. I was looking for a set that would be ideal for me. But the moment I started composing these colors and I started mixing, I found out that sometimes a color you love really well is not very versatile. Mostly you can do only one thing with them. So then the next day if you do another project, you don't need the color anymore, you need other ones. So over that full week of hunting down the proper colors, I found out so much about how these colors interact and how this interaction sometimes determines which colors should go in, rather than putting in all your favorite colors. Of course, if you're just journaling and you do some watercolors or hand lettering, by all means, just chuck in your favorite colors and that's it. But the moment you start painting and you start using painting techniques as well, you will soon find out that you will need a little bit more, and that you will need to put in a little bit more attention and time and energy, and need to do some research into the colors that you're using. So I'm not going to tell you what the ideal colors are for you because I don't know. What I can recommend though is that you probably don't have as much paint as me, and don't go and have it, because as great as it is to have paint, that much paint, it's also stressful because it's a lot of paint. I gave away a lot of my paint to charity. I kept the paint that I really love and can use for my artwork, but then I really had to, bring it back to only one box of ideal paints because I couldn't stand all the boxes around me on the table anymore to work. So yeah, the ideal paint box was as much, you know, like a little pigment craziness as it was necessity. Well, let me stop talking about it and let's go into the ideal set. Next to my YouTube channel, I also have a website. You may find it under construction because it needs a big refurbishment at this moment. And also, I have a Patreon. On my Patreon, you can check out my work, but you can also see more inside information, more process videos, and more explanation about the materials I'm working with. You will find the link below the video. Now, here's what was my ideal palette. So if you watched the live video, you will have seen the composition of this ideal palette. However, when I woke up the next morning and the sun was shining in my studio and I saw the composition of these colors, I knew in one glance that this was not a well-balanced color composition. So I started, you know, scratching some out. I decided some colors needed to move in the palette, in the composition. For instance, on the top row, you can see 3 colors that needed to move to the earth tones, which is the PBR24, which is an Naples yellow, or well, it's sort of a brown, but it's beautiful. The PO48 had to move, and the PR175, because they felt more red to me than, you know, of more brownish or earth tone like than red. So some colors needed to move, but you can also see some big X's on the in the composition. Those are colors that had to go. It's not because I didn't love the colors, it's because I knew in the mixes I was going to have, or in the entirety of colors that you want to have at hand when you're working, these colors were not going to help me you know, find the best colors for mixes. So I decided to throw them out. So I literally killed some big darlings of mine, because the lapis lazuli, the serpentine, and the apatite, the green apatite, those are colors that I used a lot. So I was gutted that I was throwing them out. But at the same time, when you have an ideal palette, you need to make it really ideal. You need to make it your go-to set of paints that you're working with. At least I had to do that. So I decided to get back to work and change the composition. So I did the whole process again, and I'm going to show you a little bit of that. I'm not going to make it as long as the live video. But then I ended up with this palette, which turned out to be my ideal palette, except for one color. But I'm going to tell you, there's one color I'm going to get out and one color I'm putting in. Back in, I should say. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. Below this video, I will also insert a link to my blog, and there I will write down a list with links to all the paints that I'm using in my ideal palette, with the names and the numbers, so if you like, you can find them. Here is my ideal palette, and on the left you can see that I have put all the tubes from the paints that I use in this palette together in one container so that I can quickly find them. Talking about killing your darlings, there is one brand that I have not included in my ideal palette, which is Roman Schmoll Aquarius Watercolor. I love this paint. It behaves wonderfully, as you can see in the little journal page that I painted. Roman sent me the new colours for 2022, and they're absolutely wonderful. It's just that they didn't come in tubes, which is why I didn't include it. But I will very quickly make a video about these new colours that are really fantastic. The container I chose for my ideal watercolour set is a metal tin box that can contain 48 officially, 52 if you cram them in, half pans. That's also the reason why I didn't choose the Roman Schmoll. I wanted to have many colours available. because the thing is that, you know, I can, with all the paints I have, I can put them all on my desk, but I don't find it very workable. I want to be able to work from one paint set alone. So that's why I chose this box. It's a metal tin box, as I said, and it came with 100 half pans and 50 full pans. So if you know, an ideal box of paint can contain a lot of colors like mine when you have few restrictions, but you can also just choose, you know, 24 colors that you really like and have full pans, and then you just go a little bit longer with your paints. Here is where the process of choosing colors begins. I started out with picking my favorite colors, and that turned out not to be the best way, because sometimes the pigments, because every pigment I chose, I looked up again and again to be sure I was picking light fast pigments that went really well with mixes. So I had to kill a lot of darlings, many more than I had expected. But also I found that even after killing my darlings, it started to become an issue about color balance. It's like choosing this color cannot go with choosing that color, so I have to see in the whole scheme of choosing colors which goes best in this set. For some reason, I never find it hard to pick the blues. There is just a big variety of characteristics in the colors and in the painting behavior. So there's granulation or complete flatness, like in the Thale colors. You know, you go from green blue to midnight blue to icy blue, and you need a good balance of those. And for some reason with the blues, I found that so much easier than with the reds that are much closer together, and you choose for opacity, transparency, and warm, or like orangey, or like heading towards purple or brown, but still the colors are much closer together, and I found it much more difficult to choose the reds than I did the blue. What really helps when you want to pick an ideal color is, because it's very hard, if you go for your favorite colors, you will soon find that maybe they won't be as perfect in an ideal palette because they might not mix very well. So they might be great on their own individually, but you will find in practice maybe you use different colors with them than the colors you put into your ideal palette. So what really helps is when you make these mixing charts. So what you do basically is you pick a blue, a yellow and a red, and you know, maybe a green. You pick some colors and you start mixing the colors you're doubting about, you know, that you're choosing. You start mixing those with these mixing colors, and then you get like a palette that you either like or you don't like. And I think this has really helped my process of finding the perfect composition of the paints. And I did this for the first time as well, for the first ideal set. Only I didn't do it well enough, and I did it again for the second set, and new colors came out. Here you can see how I struggled with picking my greens. When I woke up to my color palette, I immediately saw that the serpentine and the green apatite were not in the right place in that palette, and that they shouldn't be in that palette at all. So I started thinking about which colors should be in there then, and why, and if I needed all those greens that I had put in there, because you know, mixing the proper blues with the proper yellows will give you really lovely greens. So it gave me something to think about. And also I was really deliberating whether or not I should keep in the chromium oxide green, which I find, just like viridian green by the way, a very horrible and nasty colour. But I found out I needed them for mixing colours, and I added the cobalt green, which is a PB36. Another colour I don't really like because it's heading a little bit towards the blue, but it's like a dull colour. But when I started mixing that, and you can see that on the right in the middle, I found that it makes a wonderful transition from blues to greens in foliage, etc. So I realized by making these mixes that I actually needed to put that color in for really good color balance. Here is another darling that was finally being killed. It's the 378 Rembrandt, the PR101, which is a color I've had in every paint set that I've had since maybe 20 years, 25 years. And it's the one single color that always got used up. But now when putting together all my paints, I realized that I had so many brown tones that were so close to this. And then it came down to the mixes. Which of these brown tones mixed the best? So you can see me compare it to BR7, 411 Rembrandt. In the next slide you will see it's also compared to, PO48. And you can see me making a choice that's kind of horrible. I ended up kicking out my favorite Rembrandt brown and replacing that by the PO48 and the PBR7, both by Rembrandt, by the way, because I found that mixing these two together made the perfect copy of my favorite color. So that's also a very important thing to remember when you start picking colors, is that sometimes you can better choose different colors that mix well and that go together better with other colors than your favorite color does, because both the PO48 and the PBR7 made more beautiful mixes than the PR101. So that's why I ended up choosing for those two rather than my one favorite color. Now a little something about choosing the reds. The reds, as I said, was very hard. It was hard because the red colours are closer together, so it's more difficult to choose. You do need to make a lot of mixing charts for those as well, because there are a lot of changes, but there is another problem. One of the base colours in the reds is alizarin crimson, but alizarin crimson is not light fast. So then what do? You go look for an alternative. It turned out when I did my research online that even the permanent alizarin crimsons that manufacturers make are not that permanent at all. Most of them were rather fugitive, much to my scare. So I decided that perhaps I could make my own mix. Oh, that was a lot of work, a full day and even a few months more. The thing is that most pigments that are used for these permanent alizarin crimsons, quote unquote permanent, are not fully light fast either. So what I did was I made mixes, and I love the big swatch in the middle. That was my favorite color. It's a little bit more towards the rose, the pink than maybe I wanted, but I really love that color. But in the end, that too was not fully light fast either, because it contained a pigment that was also fugitive. So then I started looking for different things. And on the right you can see two swatches, and let's talk about that now. PR149 is very Perylene Scarlet, is very often used as or in a permanent alizarin crimson mix. But it's not fully light fast. I'm not sure if this photo shows really well, but the top half I put on my window for over half a year, in full sunlight, on the, facing the south. So it caught a lot of sunlight and it dulled down quite a bit. This is a color I would not dare use in a mix to come closer to alizarin Scarlet. What I did find though, and that was very pleasing to me, is that because with the PR149 gone, I had a very hard time, mixing my own alizarin crimson, because that was kind of an important colour in my mixes. But what I did find is that Daniel Smith permanent alizarin crimson, I cut this swatch up in half as well and put the top part on the window right next to the other swatch. And this one has remained permanent for half a year in full sunlight. So, you know, this is not like a lab test, or I can't give you any guarantees, but this looks rather light fast to me, and I would dare use this in commissions, etc. So I'm very pleased with this colour, and I'm very glad that one of these colours could end up, you know, in my palette, because I really, really love it. In fact, I love it so much that maybe this colour is going to end up in the palette at the cost of another red, but I still have to figure out which of the reds, or maybe one of the oranges that I don't use as much. But maybe I'll make a new video about that in another half year, let's see. Another colour that kept me quite busy was dioxazine purple PV23. Because I found out when I was doing, you know, my mixing and my research, that unfortunately many of the people who researched this pigment found it was not light fast. So I was quite gutted, because I really wanted, well, I think it was a first purple I wanted in my paint box. However, when it isn't light fast, it's not going to come in my paint box. So but when I talked about this in the live video, my viewers said, but PV23 is light fast. And they said, I think it was on Handprint, that they said that Core Dioxazine Purple by Golden was light fast. So you know what? I decided to make swatches of both Rembrandt Dioxazine Purple and Golden Core Dioxazine Purple. So the top half, I cut this in half, and I put the top half on the window, just like with the other two swatches. And as you can see, it hasn't become any lighter. There is a lighter space in the top half of the Rembrandt, as you can see, but that's a washout from, you know, water. That's not lighter because of the sunlight. But I think here I chose, because I really wanted this colour in my palette, and I'm going to put that in my palette. And I chose to use the Core Dioxazine Purple for my ideal palette on the basis of this, because after putting it on the window in broad sunlight for a half a year, I really dare use it for commissions. But with my ideal palette being completely filled, I knew I had to throw out one colour, you know, to put in the PV23. So the first colour I noticed I never ever use was Chinese White, PW4, and I had the Rembrandt 108 in there, but I never used it. The only white I use is a PW6, which is an opaque white. I also have that from Rembrandt, which is the 106. So, you know, I needed to do a little test to see if I could really miss the Chinese White. When picking a colour or throwing out, you need to make new swatches. So there is a column on the left that's with the PW4 Chinese White. Then there is a column in the middle. Those are colours mixed with PW6, the covering white. And then, which is just the great thing about watercolour, is that if you are looking for pastels, you wouldn't really quickly mix with white. You would simply throw in more water. So that's what I did. And then I started comparing my watered down swatches with the columns of paint with, you know, the Chinese White and the covering white, to see which of these two would differ most, because that's what I think is important now, is that I look for the biggest contrast between the watered down colour and the one that's mixed with the white. I felt the covering white was different enough because it created sort of like a gouache feeling in the paint. That's something that you could be looking for in your mixes, and it would be a great, you know, complement or complementary, well, wonderfully complementary to the watered down version, pastel versions of the paint. So I decided that yes, the Chinese White can go, and in favour of the PV23, and then I have a little bit of space for it. So On the top left, you can see the Chinese white, and I'm going to replace that with the dioxazine purple. And I will have to put it there for the time being because it's the easiest to change on my colour chart without having to reposition all the colour, all the pans, and do the swatches again. But you know, with the permanent alizarin crimson having come into the game, because I took these swatches down only yesterday. So it's only since yesterday that I know this Daniel Smith permanent alizarin crimson is so wonderfully light fast, which is why I think I'm quite sure I'm going to have to be looking for another replacement. So in the next couple of months I'll be keeping my eyes open, you know, with my set to see which colors get used a lot, which colors are not used a lot, and I will put in the permanent alizarin crimson and take out one of the others. The two colors that at this moment I think are in danger of being kicked out is Cobalt Violet PV14 or Cobalt Violet U PV62, because those colors I don't use a lot that to begin with. And also think that maybe I can easily mix something that looks like that, albeit that they wouldn't be granulating as these pigments are, of course. But this is just a first thought, and I think only time can tell. You know, if you look at this set, you can see that with some paints, I'm already nearly hitting the bottom of the well. So those are the paints that will definitely stay in, and then there is paints that hardly get used. One colour I'm completely surprised I hardly used is the Daniel Smith Piemontite, which I thought was going to be a really great addition to my set, but that might also, you know, be in danger of having to go. But I need a little bit of time for that, but at least, you know, the permanent alizarin crimson is now back under in my attention, and I will definitely, you know, fill up a pan and keep that very close at hand. So here is a final peek at my ideal palette, albeit that the Chinese white on the top left will go out and will be replaced by PV23 dioxazine purple. Well, all the rest, all the other colours, I will make a list and put them in my blog so you can visit that. I will add links so that you can quickly find these products should you be interested. There are no affiliations. I'm not getting paid for them. This is just, you know, the paints that I really love because they're good, light, fast, stable colours that behave really well. Looking back, I was really surprised to find so many Rembrandt colours in there. I'm not affiliated to Rembrandt at all, but what I do like is that in the comparisons that I did and in the mixes, their colours just stood really, really strong. A brand that I was a little bit disappointed by was Sennelier. I had expected that they would come out a lot better, but sometimes their colours in the mixes dull down quite a bit more than the competition. So yeah, all in all, I think this is really lovely. The last comment I want to make is about the bottom right, the Kremer gold that I've added, that I put in there. It's the only full pan that I've used because it's only available in pans, and you know, they only have full pans. So, or maybe, well, later somebody said no, they also sell half pans, but anyway, I use it so much that a full pan is no luxury, it's a big necessity. So anyway, I really hope you liked this video. I promised I was going to do the Roman Schmoll Aquarius review of the new colours really soon, and I will. And there will be an update about any changes that I make in this ideal set when I do. And well, as you already know, the permanent alizarin crimson has got to go in because the Perylene Red Dark, which is a PR178, is the darkest red that I have. You know, the third on the right, on the top row, is not even coming close to an alizarin crimson. So there's got to be something in this composition that I'm going to change. If you have any suggestions on the basis of this palette that you say, oh Mandy, you should be changing this or that, to put in, take out this colour to put in the alizarin crimson, it does have to be a really well-founded suggestion, not say, well, take out this or that, just, as like a quick suggestion, because all these colours have been picked on the basis of mixing and, the, what shall we say, the colour balance. And so, yeah, it's going to take a bit of reflection to put another one in. One other colour I am deliberating that could go out maybe is the PV55 quinacridone purple bluish, I think it is, by Rembrandt. It is a gorgeous colour, but I am wondering if putting in the PV23 and mixing that one with a PV19 couldn't be as wonderful a colour. So yes, well, I hope you know what I mean. I lost my thoughts there for a minute. Well, anyway, I hope you liked this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. There will be more. And if you like my voice, my work, then please visit my Patreon, and you can see a lot more there of me. Thank you very much for watching, and if you're about to create your ideal palette, I want to wish you a lot of joy doing it, and good luck too, because it really is hard work. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye!